What's up, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Bulls Latest. Your host, Matt Johnson here. Got an exciting show on tap for you guys today. We're going to start it by looking at Josh Giddy and an update on him. Josh Giddy, like I reported a few weeks back, was in Las Vegas for the Bulls Summer League. However, he did not show face at any of the Summer League contests for Chicago. That probably has a lot to do with the stalemate in contract negotiations between the two sides. However, Giddy's camp and the Chicago Bulls did meet during their time in Vegas. Giddy's camp was firm on wanting $30 million a year. This was widely reported, and they're looking for a deal similar to that of Jalen Suggs, who's on a 5-year, $150 million deal, and Emmanuel Quickley, who's also on a 5-year, $162 million deal. The Bulls, it's been reported, have not offered more than a 4-year contract in the $20 million per year range, and this doesn't surprise me at all. I think it makes a lot of sense for the Bulls to play hardball here, considering how the Pat Williams sweepstakes went down and how they got kind of fleeced in re-signing him to the money that they did, and it's left them in a very sticky situation moving forward. I do expect the two sides to reunite and negotiate and find common ground eventually. I've talked about this many times. At some point this summer, before they move into the preseason in October, I think Josh Giddy will ultimately be a Chicago Bull. There is another element to this and another angle I wanted to kind of talk about. Chicago could always add a trade kicker to his contract to give him more money in the event he's ever traded, which could be a way for both sides to ultimately get what they want in a very sophisticated way there. A trade kicker would allow some more freedom to get a deal done now and kind of allow more freedom later, if that makes sense. And I think, when you look at this Josh Giddy situation, things have been ongoing, and I know the talks are getting repetitive, but this is a major piece to the Bulls offseason in a lot of ways because it will kind of dictate what the Bulls are going to do moving forward on whatever happens with Josh. So kind of switching gears to another Chicago Bull, it's a guy I've talked about time and time again as well, and Ayo Dosunmu. The Golden State Warriors continue to show a strong interest in adding him. According to multiple reports here, I looked at Brett Siegel of Clutch Points. He definitely said that there continues to be a strong negotiation path for Golden State when it comes to adding Ayo. Personally, I think doing a sign-and trade with Ayo Dosunmu and Jonathan Kuminga would be optimal for both sides. I've pushed and pushed for the Bulls to add a guy like Jonathan Kuminga. I think he has a lot to offer. He's looking to kind of springboard his career and get more minutes in a much more playable situation for himself. And I think Chicago is the perfect place to do that. He's a young player. I think he offers a lot of energy and a scoring touch that the Bulls could be interested in adding here. When you look at Ayo going to Golden State, he's a guy who would play alongside guys like Steph Curry. I think Ayo Dosunmu would find an awesome role in that organization. He's a good player and a guy who is valued very much throughout other NBA circles. And you've seen me talk about teams constantly reaching out on Ayo, including the Dallas Mavericks. That kind of fell off, however. Golden State has not fallen off. They are definitely all in on Ayo Dosunmu and looking to try to add him and articulate a deal that makes sense for both sides here. So we'll keep an eye on Ayo and what's going to transpire there. And another guy, and this was a deal, if you guys remember, I looked at a while back, but a straight-up swap, Patrick Williams for Kyle Kuzma, sending Pat Williams to Milwaukee. Let me get into why this makes sense for both sides. If you're the Bulls, I think adding Kyle Kuzma would give the Bulls a proven scorer and a playoff veteran, and you could get him on a shorter deal because let's be honest here, the big piece in this for the Bulls would be shedding Patrick Williams' contract. That would be a massive win in my eyes. So putting Kuzma on a 2-year deal, you add some offensive punch, and he would be either a key starter or a reserve guy. And I think he could be a key part to this roster, even if it's for a shorter time span there. Moving Williams allows Chicago to get off that 4-year, roughly $72 million deal. And $72 million left on a deal is a lot of money that's tied up into a guy who's been rather unsuccessful here. I know I've talked about that. It's getting kind of, repetitive here, but I do think Pat Williams and shedding it would be a huge W for the Bulls. So we'll continue to watch that. And if you're Milwaukee, I think Pat Williams, although he's had his troubles, would be a defensive upgrade. He's a younger player at 23 years old, has some potential upside still. He would act as a solid rotation piece next to Giannis Antetokounmpo, I think. So if you're Milwaukee, it's not totally out of the question in terms of why they would want to add Pat Williams. I think there are some things that line up with that organization and himself. Outside of just the contract there. So especially the fact that they moved on from a guy like Chris Middleton, I think Pat Williams could kind of fill the role that Chris Middleton played there. And I think Williams is a guy who still has a lot to give, even though it's not necessarily, I don't think, going to be for the Chicago Bulls for the long-term future here of himself. So that's a situation we'll continue to look at and what's going to go on with him. Last but not least, a deal that I want to see, a guy I want to see in a Chicago Bulls uniform at this point in the offseason. Hear me out on this one, Zion Williamson. I want to see Zion Williamson become a Chicago Bull. I think it would be a very exciting opportunity for the Bulls. You would definitely have to package, and this is where it gets tricky, you would have to package something that includes Kobe White, maybe Kevin Huerter, other rotational players, some first-round picks. It's a gamble, but the player in which Zion has shown he can be could reshape the franchise if he stays healthy. And he's shown that in his time in college, and he's shown flashes in the NBA. But if you can get Zion on the right track, I think it would definitely be worth a big swing by this Bulls front office. It would offer some excitement for this organization. It would offer them an opportunity to give a guy a fresh start in a big city in a good basketball franchise, one of the more iconic ones in all sports. So Zion Williamson, I could see, no matter if it's the Bulls or if he gets an opportunity with somebody that kind of rejuvenates his passion for the game, this guy could turn into the star player we all wanted him to become as he entered the NBA. And I think the Bulls are the next chapter that makes a lot of sense for him. So we'll continue to look at that deal and if that makes sense for him in Chicago. Overall, though, I mean, a lot of these are hypotheticals. The one thing that's not hypothetically going to happen, Josh Giddy coming to a deal with the Bulls, that is going to happen at some point. We're going to just have to wait and see and continue to watch these talks take place. But as far as anyone else that the Bulls have on this roster, nobody's untouchable to this point. It is still, we're still waiting to see some dominoes fall. But, it's interesting. I think you could enter a situation where Nikola Vucevic, DeSumo, and Kobe White all remain with this roster moving into next season, and then up to the trade deadline or the All-Star break. I mean, we'll see what happens next year, but I could see all three guys being moved at some point next season, depending on how things go there. Again, the Bulls win total sits somewhere around 32.5, so they're not expected to be much better than they were this past season. And that it makes a lot more sense for them to deal those guys at the trade deadline next year if they're unable to get a new start somewhere this offseason. So overall, I mean, it's going to be kind of a stagnant approach during the next couple of weeks here. It's going to be a lot of the same talk circulating, but I'll continue to try and find new angles and new reports on guys to give you guys. And I think there's a lot of scenarios. That's what's fun about this Bulls organization and the direction they're heading. Nobody really knows what they want to do with the current roster pieces that they have. So I think that makes it fun. I think, depending on what direction the Bulls are going to head, you're going to see some of these moves start to take place and reshape this roster. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I think it depends on how you look at it as a Chicago Bulls fan. It could be super frustrating, but in an event the Bulls are looking to kind of continue to reshape their identity, they could follow in making some of these moves happen. So overall, let me know what you guys want to see this Bulls team do in the comments. I know it's a lot of the same names being thrown around. Are there any new names you want to take a look at? Do you agree with me wanting to see Zion Williamson in a Chicago Bulls uniform moving forward? And then, Pat Williams, would you accept a Kuzma straight up swap there? I'll be interested to hear what you guys have to say. Again, I want to thank you guys for joining me in another episode of Bulls Latest, and we will talk to you next time.